Hi, and welcome to Web3 Unfiltered, podcast where we move beyond hype cycles to explore the real mechanics shaping decentralized systems, digital infrastructure, and the technologies redefining modern organizations. I am your host, Collins Victory Odabi. As digital systems grow more complex, security has become one of the most critical and often misunderstood aspects of technology. Organizations today must navigate an increasingly complicated landscape of compliance frameworks, regulatory requirements, and operational risks. For companies operating in cloud environments, fintech, healthcare, and even emerging technologies like Web3, security is no longer just a technical challenge. It's a strategic requirement that directly affects trust, adoption, and long-term sustainability. My guest today works directly at the intersection of security governance, compliance frameworks, and risk management. I'm joined today by Lori Crooks. She is the founder and CEO of Cadre, a company focused on security assessments and security management projects, with a career dedicated to information security assessments, policy development, and compliance advisory. Lori has helped organizations navigate complex frameworks such as NIST 853, FedRAMP, FISMA, ISO 27001, HIPAA, PCI DSS, and SOC audits. Her work helps companies build policies, procedures, and security architectures needed to protect sensitive systems and meet strict regulatory standards. Lori, welcome to Web3 Unfiltered. How are you doing today?
Thanks, Collins. I am doing well. How about yourself?
I am doing very well, thank you.
Good.
It's a pleasure to have you on the show today.
Yes, thank you. I'm excited to talk about security and compliance.
All right, excited to have you here. Okay, Lori. So first off, before we begin or go straight into the interview, I'd like to ask my guests to talk a bit about themselves. Tell us a bit about your story. What is your story? How did you get to this very point?
Sure. So I kind of fell into where I am now, or just took some right turns along the way. But growing up, I actually always wanted to be in the medical field. So I thought I was going to be either a doctor or a physical therapist or something in there. And then I got to college and started doing like chemistry and all those advanced level science classes and knew it wasn't for me. So I bounced around for a little bit and then ended up doing accounting, which is obviously still not security, but ended up graduating with an accounting degree and then went back and got my master's in accounting information systems as well. And during that time, I was doing some financial auditing for the state. And I got tired of the number crunching. And so they were hiring for IT auditors, beginner level IT auditors. And I thought, well, why not, give it a shot? So I ended up going and learning IT, how to audit, learned about the technology. And from there, I've just been in cybersecurity audits and assessments ever since. I've worked within the industry for several large organizations. I've worked with external consulting for several years. And then 9 years ago, I started my own organization trying to help other small to medium-sized businesses with their compliance and security issues. So that's how I ended up here.
It's amazing, Lori. From a dream to become to go into medicine to security environment, or should I say the security niche. Well, it's really amazing. Should I say it's a very strategic pivot or interesting pivot. Okay, Lori, in fast-moving industries, security often becomes an afterthought. Companies focus heavily on product development and growth, assuming they can deal with security later. I'm sure you've seen this happen several times. But then experienced security professionals like yourself know that the cost of retrofitting security after a system is built can be enormous, both financially and operationally. So, Lori, from your experience working with organizations across different industries, why do so many companies underestimate the importance of security frameworks early in their development?
It's a great question, and one I struggle with trying to show the importance of cybersecurity and compliance. I think because cybersecurity is not a profit center, like you said, they would rather focus on product development and other things that are going to end up making them money at the end of the day. But unfortunately, if cybersecurity is not thought of at the forefront or the foundation of building the product or their service or whatever they're working on, it could end up costing them a lot more money down the line if they get breached, if they get fined for not being in compliance, if something happens again to their data and customers find out. Not only are they going to lose money, it's going to hurt their reputation at the end of the day. So there are a lot of things that could happen. And I think outside of it not being a profit center, I think people are just thinking, oh, it's not going to happen to me. I don't need to worry about it. And so it's just at the back of their minds, if that, and it doesn't really bother them, which is, it's tough to sell cybersecurity to organizations like that.
Very interesting. Very, very interesting. And so, Laurie, once organizations begin taking security seriously, they quickly encounter a maze of standards and frameworks like FedRAMP, NIST, ISO 007, HIPAA, PCI, and others. For many leaders, this landscape can feel overwhelming. Each framework appears complex, yet they all share a common goal: creating structured, verifiable security practices. So for companies new to compliance frameworks, how should they think about choosing the right standard and where to begin?
It's a great question. And we often laugh about it and we call it alphabet soup at the end of the day because there are so many acronyms and so many things that just don't make sense to people outside of the cybersecurity world. But yeah, if somebody is starting out with cybersecurity and doesn't know where to start, a lot of the frameworks are built for specific purposes. For example, FedRAMP is specifically for those organizations that are in the cloud and looking to sell to governmental agencies. HIPAA is a framework around personal healthcare information. PCI is around payment card information. So I always recommend that the organization looks at the type of data that they have, and then from there decide what frameworks are going to be enforced because of the type of data that they have. There are also some great frameworks like the NIST cybersecurity framework for organizations that don't have to comply with anything else but want a solid framework. They can start with that one because it covers a lot of ground and it is a good first place to start, and they can also measure themselves against it 1 year to another if they so choose.
Thank you so much, Laurie, for that insightful explanation. Laurie, one common misconception about compliance is that it automatically guarantees security. In reality, compliance frameworks provide structure and guidance, but organizations still need strong internal practices and culture to make them effective. Security is as much about operational discipline as it is about technical controls. So, Laurie, what do you think is the biggest difference between being compliant and actually being secure? And why do organizations sometimes confuse the two?
Another great question. I think it comes down to if people are not putting security as the forefront and they're just shooting for compliance, it's often like they're just putting things in place to check a box. For example, they might have policies and procedures, but no one knows where to find them. No one knows what they say. They might enforce training, but again, people are just clicking through and the culture is not enforcing it. It's very important to have a cybersecurity culture because a lot of the holes and unfortunately a lot of the issues that are caused from a cybersecurity are people related. And so if the culture is not supporting cybersecurity and it's just trying to check that box for compliance, the people could not be aware of mistakes they are making, whether it's on purpose or not on purpose. They're the ones that are going to be clicking the phishing links or responding to random text messages or just trying to be helpful and providing their username and password to somebody else. So it's really important to make sure that the people understand the importance of cybersecurity and not just have a few people doing it for compliance sake, but have it integrated throughout the entire organization.
Brilliantly explained, Glory. Thank you so much. And Glory, another growing challenge today is third-party risk. Businesses increasingly rely on vendors, cloud providers, and software integrations. I'm sure you know all of this, which means that their security posture often depends on systems that they do not fully control, and this creates a chain of trust that can easily break if one link is weak. So, Lori, with all you've explained now, how should organizations think about managing third-party security risks in a world where systems are deeply interconnected?
Yes, as you mentioned, this is key right now. And a lot of the standards are making sure that they have added this to their latest version because it is such a big risk, like you mentioned. But when organizations think about third-party risk or vendor risk, I typically recommend that they start with a list of all their vendors and third parties that they work with or they're connected with, and go through them and decide what kind of data is coming to and from that vendor, and then actually assigning a criticality to each of the vendors depending on the data that they're either receiving or giving, or if that vendor has direct access to their environment, that one might be rated higher as well. And from there, they can decide, okay, how frequently do we want to evaluate that vendor based on the data and or access that they have. For example, with the most critical vendors, you might want to do a more in-depth review of their cybersecurity program, make sure that they have a third-party audit on a regular basis, ask them questions, etc., versus someone who might not have any access and is just dropping, mail off and doesn't have any sensitive data. You might review their security once every 3 years. But it's important to make sure that you are tracking the data, tracking the access, and tracking the vendors that you're working with on a regular basis, and then figuring it out, again, what sort of information are they having and how are they protecting the data and the access that you have granted them.
You have a very valid point. It's very important to keep tracking the access and the kind of data that these third-party platforms have access to. Now, Lori, behind every strong security posture lies a set of well-defined or well-designed policies and procedures. These documents often sound very bureaucratic, but in reality, they are what translates security strategy into daily operational practice. Now, without clear policies, even the best technical tools can fail. And I'm sure you agree with me here. So, what are the most important?
Yes.
So, what are the most important elements organizations should include when developing effective security policies?
They should make sure, it seems obvious, but they should make sure they're accurate, number one, and up to date. As we all know, technology changes very rapidly. So you want to make sure that your policies and procedures are reflective of those changes. So we recommend that the policies and procedures should be reviewed at least annually and or when there are significant changes to the environment. And then you want to make sure that they are distributed to the correct personnel, because if you have a technical person who is supposed to be doing access control and he doesn't have access to the access control procedure, he might not actually be doing the processes accurately as the organization would like them to. And then, kind of to go on the back of that, you want to make sure that they have enough detail that if for some reason that IT guy who is doing the access setup and termination on a regular basis, if something happens to him and he has to go away and he doesn't have a backup, that somebody else can actually pick up and do that job pretty quickly based on the level of detail within the documentation that they have.
You know what you just said. Another often overlooked element is employee awareness. I would term what you just explained as employee awareness. Sort of many security breaches occur not because systems fail, but because people misunderstand security practices or unknowingly expose sensitive data. And training and internal awareness programs can play a very critical role here. So, Lori, how important is security or is employee training in maintaining strong information security, and what makes a security training program truly effective?
It's very important. Security training is educating the user on things that they shouldn't or shouldn't do. It's also keeping them up to date on any new threats out there. For example, I was talking to somebody the other day about kind of the gift card, I don't want to say hack, but the gift card kind of text messaging where a boss is trying to ask, quote unquote boss, is asking an employee to run out and get them gift cards, spend a couple $100s on gift cards, and then, send him the numbers of the gift cards. But unfortunately, that's not a real manager asking him for those gift card numbers, but it is something that's new and a lot of people are falling for. So employees need to know what the threats are out there. They need to learn what phishing is, because it's getting harder and harder to tell what is an actual phishing attempt now versus what isn't, because they're getting so sophisticated. As you mentioned, I think I mentioned it earlier too, employees are unfortunately the biggest gap when it comes to security, because they could mess up not knowingly. They could click on the link, they could go out and get the gift cards, they could share their username and password with who they think is an IT person, and then that username and password is used to access the environment. So people really are at the center of security awareness and security within the organization. I think a good program, and it's honestly really hard to figure out what makes a good security training program these days, because people's attention spans are so short and they don't want to go through required training, if we're all being honest. But I've seen some where they start like gamifying it, or instead of an annual security awareness training, they do, a monthly short video where they have to answer questions. So they're trying to keep the employees more engaged so they learn in different ways. And I think they're moving in the right direction with some of the ways that they're modifying the training to kind of meet employees halfway, to educate them, but also to almost entertain them in a sort of way.
Yeah, and I think most hackers will probably prey on the weaker links within an organization. Within an organization, there could be security personnel that they would target, try to get information from. And just like the gift card hack that I just explained, usually people that are prioritized or that are targeted in such attacks are those weaker links. And I think it's further validates the importance of security training amongst employees. And you mentioned something about gamifying the training, and I think we see a lot of these happening in education today. There are so many education platforms or education concepts that are drifting towards gaming, and we even see that in the Web3 environment today. Now, talking about Web3 environment, emerging technologies like Web3 AI and decentralized infrastructure introduce entirely new security challenges. These systems often operate across multiple jurisdictions, often involving new trust models and interacting with complex digital ecosystems. As a result, many organizations struggle to apply traditional compliance frameworks to these new technologies. So, Laurie, from your perspective, how should organizations approach security and compliance when working with emerging technologies?
I think they should continue keeping security at the forefront of their minds. I know that sounds redundant, but just kind of thinking about what, we'll use AI for example, what data am I putting into this AI program? And what would happen if this data is being used for training on the back end? Is it going to be spit out to somebody else, later down the line that's not within the organization? So it's a matter of just kind of thinking through what you're doing and making sure, going back to educating the employees, making sure the employees are aware of the new risks for the emerging technology. The frameworks try to keep up, but they don't always, unfortunately. Going back to AI, NIST and ISO just put out AI frameworks, I think last year, which help. But again, until they're fully recognized and organizations start implementing them, it really comes down to making sure that employees are educated. The technology organization or security organization, whoever's running security, knows what their users are using and making sure that it's allowed and appropriate.
It's amazing, Laurie. Thank you so much for the explanation. And at the same time, regulators and industry bodies are beginning to adapt frameworks or their frameworks to keep pace with technological change. The next decade will likely see new standards, specifically for cloud systems, AI applications, decentralized networks, and just like you mentioned, I think you said some standards were recently released for AI systems last year. So, Laurie, what trends do you see shaping the future of security compliance and regulatory frameworks?
I think they're going to be more integrated into the regular frameworks. For example, we talked about vendor risk management, and while that's always sort of been an issue, it's been a separate or not included in the standard frameworks. But when NIST 853 came out with their latest version, Red 5, a couple years ago, they made sure that vendor risk management was a part of that. And then other frameworks also started adding it to it. So I think in the future, there's not going to be a separate AI framework. I think it's going to be integrated into the current frameworks because AI, I think, is going to start to play such a role in security and privacy in the future. So there has to be some integration into the current standards of how people are using it and protecting the data.
Thank you, Laurie. Now, for founders, developers, and builders working in new technological environments, security can sometimes feel like a barrier to innovation. But in reality, strong security design often becomes a competitive advantage, especially when trust is very critical. Projects that integrate security early often avoid costly mistakes later. I think we already established something like this earlier in the conversation. Now, Laurie, what advice would you give to founders and technology leaders who want to build secure systems from the beginning rather than trying to retrofit security later?
I actually was just having this conversation with somebody yesterday, but I think those organizations that include security at the beginning of the development are going to come out better in the end because number one, they obviously are, well, not obviously, but hopefully are more secure because they've considered security. It's going to end up being cheaper for them in the long run as well. What happens when organizations try to retrofit security in it's more difficult for them to go back and change the code or add tools that are appropriate. As an example, for CMMC, if those that are aware of CMMC, that's for DoD contractors, that's really big right now. But a lot of the tools that they require have to be FedRAMP or FedRAMP equivalent. So if those tools that the organization is using aren't FedRAMP or NIST 853 equivalent, they're going to have to go purchase new tools and install those across the organization versus organizations that are actually installing those initially as part of their build and their development of the product or system. And they're going to set themselves apart, I think, at the end of the day too, because they could come out and say, we've gotten our audit or third-party attestation early because we're trying to do the right thing from the beginning and the get-go.
In addition to all of that, ultimately, I think security isn't just about compliance or risk avoidance. It's about trust. Users, customers, and partners, they all need confidence that the systems they rely on are designed with integrity and protection in mind. Do you have any last remarks or any notes for our listeners before we wrap up?
No, I think you summarized it perfectly. It's not just about compliance. It's not about security, but it's about protecting your customers and your integrity and your reputation and your customers at the end of the day. As you mentioned, it does boil down to trust, and those organizations that are thinking of their customers and their data and their employees first, by ensuring security is in place, I think are going to go the furthest in these next couple of years.
All right, Lori, thank you so much. This has been an incredibly grounded session. I really appreciate your presence here on Web3 on Twitter. I'm sure we have all learned a lot. So from everything we've discussed so far, we understand that security and compliance frameworks may appear complex, but at their core, they exist to protect trust, the foundation, which is the foundation of every digital system. Organizations that understand how to design security into their operations from the beginning will be far better positioned to thrive in an increasingly connected and risk-sensitive world. So that wraps up today's episode of Web3 on Twitter. A big thank you to Lori Crooks for sharing her insights on security frameworks, compliance, and building resilient systems in a rapidly evolving digital landscape. Until next time, stay sharp, stay curious, and keep building.